I felt like you guys wore down UCLA. And keep in mind, Adim Bona, he's out. Jalen Clark is out. I felt like UCLA's depth played a role today.
Absolutely.
Played an absolute role. And even so, more so with Bona today, because rebounding differential, you guys dominated the boards. 50-26 in favor of Gonzaga.
I didn't realize it was that much.
50-26.
That's been an emphasis for as long as I can remember. You know, I mean, this goes back a long time to when I played, but you know, we got absolutely obliterated from Michigan State on the glass years ago, and ever since then, that has been a focal point of Coach Few's philosophy: is we have to be great on the glass, and I think it speaks to it. You know, you're talking about a Pac-12 team that's about to move to the Big Ten, and everybody talks about the bruisers in that league. Well, Gonzaga went up against some bruisers, minus Bona, obviously, and handled the glass. So when it's needed, they can do it. But, you know, I didn't realize it was a plus 24 advantage. That's
large.
You know, the fact that UCLA could keep it to a three-point game and being beat that badly on the glass shows a lot for UCLA.
Yeah, I still just can't get over that performance from Drew Timme.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about it earlier out there. Marquise Noel had 20 points, 19 assists, and 5 steals in the Garden at 5'6", and they beat Michigan State and they got to the Elite Eight. And I'm sitting here like, I don't know if he was better than what Timme was. That's crazy. But there was a stretch in that first half where I think he had 21 of Gonzaga's first 33 points. Yeah. Right in the first half.
He had 19 in the first half.
19 of the 19 of their 33 in the first half.
Crazy good.
And if he's not doing that, then you have no chance. Like, you were able to make a run in the second half. Gonzaga was able to make a run. But if Timme doesn't keep it close, we're not even having this conversation. They're not by 25.
I also have to point out, we talked about the rebounding discrepancy, and I just found this here. That's the only reason I'm doing it now. In the first half, they were even. So in the second half, Gonzaga out-rebounded them 34-11. That's got to be something.
It goes back to getting stops on the defensive end and not giving second chance points, but then
finishing possessions.
Glass.
Finishing possessions. Right.
Fouls. I think UCLA had 2 in the first half. So Timme was scoring.
No, it was 1 in the first half.
It was 1?
It was 1. Yeah.
I mean, he was scoring, but they weren't putting foul pressure on. In the second half, they were putting foul pressure on. Granted, I do think the officials called it much tighter in the second half.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I thought they let some things go both ways in the first, where sometimes in a game like this, you're feeling the officials out in the flow of the game and trying to figure out what's a foul, what's not.
I still don't know, Dan. I still don't know. This is what, game 3?
Yeah.
It's game to game.
Yes, so I 100% agree with that.
You know what I find fascinating? We talked about this on our pregame show today, is that the last, 3 or 4 years, Gonzaga's kind of had this air about them. People have been talking about the chance to go undefeated. Last year, they were the favorite everybody had. I think they were the number 1 team in the country in KenPom heading into the NCAA tournament. I believe they were the number 1 overall seed last year, correct?
I think so.
This year, they're kind of I don't want to say flying under the radar, but they didn't have a great non-conference schedule. They didn't have a great non-conference schedule, and then they came out in WCC play and they lost to St. Mary's. I don't even think they were the number 1 seed.
They weren't in the number 1 seed in the tournament because St. Mary's won the tiebreaker to be the 1 seed in the tournament. But when you look at those games against St. Mary's, Gonzaga, if you count the 2 regular season and the tournament title game, they led for, out of the 125 minutes, they probably led for 118 of those minutes. So St. Mary's only outplayed them for a couple minutes stretch to get that win in Moraga. But I think it was good for Gonzaga to be under the radar because there's been so much pressure and, unfortunately, so much scrutiny because they've been so good without winning the entire thing. Where if you look at everybody nationally, national program-wise.
Today's episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play college basketball pick'em, where you can get a little extra sweat during March Madness and win real cash prizes simply by picking player stats in this weekend's games. In Pick'em, all you do is predict whether a player will go higher or lower on Underdog's projected totals, whether that's points, rebounds, whatever. For example, if you're like me and you think Zach Edey is going to go nuts in this tournament, pick higher on his points projection, add up to 4 more picks, and if you hit them all, you can win 20 times your money on a single game. Underdog's slick mobile app is easy enough that dummies like Jeff Goodman have even figured it out. So go to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app and use the code FIELD, F-I-E-L-D, and Underdog will match your deposit up to $100. Now is the time to get in on the madness. So remember, underdogfantasy.com, promo code FIELD.
If you haven't won a national title, you would trade your resume for Gonzaga.
No question.
Yeah.
No
So
question.
I don't understand the scrutiny.
The other thing I don't get is how everyone's like, Mark Few can't win the big one. Then he gets to the Final Four.
Yeah.
And then he gets to the national title game. It's like, Mark Few still can't win the big one. Like, come on, you're changing the goalposts on this here.
100%.
Yeah. I just feel like it's almost like Gonzaga's become a team of destiny this year. It sounds really weird to say that, right?
I think
Gonzaga,
this is
how many programs have been more successful than them in the last decade?
But I also think
Like you can't. It's going to be on one hand you can count on.
this Gonzaga team's different because it's been a process to where in the last few you have Jalen Suggs, you have Nembhard, your guard play and a lot of your production was ready made from the beginning of the season.
100%.
This year it hasn't been the case.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, the thing I don't think a lot of people nationally understand and realize, as good as Jalen Suggs was, Andrew Nembhard made that team.
Oh
better.
yeah,
Because
so good.
he allowed Suggs to do the things that Suggs could do instinctually and just go out and play. Where every big possession that year, the ball was in Nembhard's hands in a pick and roll, and he was the decision maker. And Nolan Hickman had the ability to grow a little bit last year, 12, 14 minutes a game or whatever under Nembhard, but the game was dictated by Nembhard. So you had to understand and realize that there was going to be a learning curve with Hickman, and he didn't play great tonight, and I'm sure he'd be the first to admit it. But his growth from start of the year until now has been tremendous.
Right.
And I think that's one of you got to give Coach Few a lot of credit for.
Hunter Salas too, really.
Yeah, and Hunter Salas, when he's played backup point guard minutes, they play with a faster pace, and it's been really good to see. But I think one of the unique things about Gonzaga over the course of the year is, as Coach Few has worked on the details with the guards, they've gotten better. They were terrible in regards to turning it over early in the year. Now you look up end of the season, I think they're top 15, maybe 20 in turnovers per game. So they've cleaned up the things that need to be cleaned up, and that has to go to the staff figuring out what needs to be adjusted, what needs to be taught in practice, and the players buying in and then emphasizing it and getting better at it.
All right, last thing. I'm going to let you get out of here, Dan.
He's got beer to drink.
Yeah, you got beer to drink.
There's a lot of Zags up there right now.
All right, last thing I got for you is you got UConn, who has probably been the most impressive team in this tournament.
They looked unbelievable.
They're right there in the same conversation. How does Gonzaga match up with UConn? How do they beat UConn?
Well, I'll say this. It's interesting and unique is that Gonzaga's first NCAA tournament deep run,
I was just telling
UConn
someone
knocked
this,
them
yeah.
out. And so, like, I mentioned it to somebody today.
Were you
like,
on that team?
I was not. I was a sophomore at UW.
And you transferred
cheering
in, yeah.
for my buddies on that initial Gonzaga team. Transferred after that. But you look at that initial UConn-Gonzaga game, it's a chance to kind of relive that. It's not a rivalry by any stretch, but relive that game and flip the tables to get to another Final Four. But when I watched UConn play today, and I saw them at different points throughout the season on TV, and I liked what I saw, but it's hard to grasp how physical and how strong they are, how great spacing and pace they play with. What they did to Arkansas today was awesome. Like, they looked like, okay, national title, I can absolutely see that out of UConn. I was impressed with Sanogo in person. I was impressed with Hawkins. And then I'm drawing a blank on the bigger point guard.
Tristan Newton.
Yeah, no.
Andre Jackson.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was absolutely impressed with him. I saw him on TV this year, and I was like, good player. See him in person.
It's different.
Like,
It's
he
different.
controls the game. Like, he's entering it as a big guard with left hand, one hand passes on target, on the money to enter offense.
Like Josh Childress.
Ooh. I think he enters offense better.
I think so too.
I think Childress might have been a better defender, but that's my West Coast bias, having seen Childress in person a lot and not having seen him
Neither
in
one
person
of them could
much.
shoot it coming out of college.